Hey everyone, how's it going? Back again for our final episode of Halton MakeFest 2021. It's been an amazing week and we've got one more amazing session ready to show you today. In this episode, we're going to be looking at flower pressing. So just before we jump into that, we're going to go around and see our team. So as usual, on our comments today, we have Paul. How's it going, Paul?
Hey, I'm good. How's everybody else?
Hopefully everyone's all right.
Let me know in the comments.
We'll see. So if you've got any questions for Claire, we're going to come to in a second, about flower pressing or to the team, make sure you get them in there with Paul. You can let us know where you're from. Anything else you wanted to know about from them, Paul?
We've got a comment already. We've got Gemma from Germany watching us again.
Oh, fantastic. I think that might be, we found that might be a relation before, didn't we? I think so. We'll see.
Oh, we've just had another one. Sorry, come through. Cambridge, USA.
Cambridge, USA. There you go. Halton going worldwide. As usual, controlling the wizardry of the buttons and all of the video angles and the sound that we've got up on stage, we have Mr. Ian Pye.
You all right?
I'm not too bad. How are you, Ian? How's the stress of this week been treating you?
Oh, I've got a talking role now. Hang on. Yeah, just trying to put my name. Yeah, I'm good. It's been really good. Really happy with how it's gone. I hope everybody at home's been enjoying it. Yeah, excited to see what happens.
I think Ian has done a fantastic job this week putting all this together and managed to stitch it all together and managed to make me and the rest of the team look somewhat half decent and competent. It's all down to his managing to whiz around all those buttons and get it all put together. We have Andrew O'Brien, and we're in an attempt to walking shot. So Andrew is taking us with all our nice steady shots today as we're going around the studio and helps us do shot types like this as we're moving around the stage and as we're able to go around. And last but not least, the most important person here today, we have our very special guest, Claire from Hazelhurst Studio, who is going to be teaching us all about flower pressing. How's it going, Claire?
Yeah, good, thank you, yes.
Brilliant. So we've known each other for years.
Yeah,
I can't even think back about how, and we've done lots of different projects, and I've seen you do tons of different art projects in the past, but today we're going to specifically looking at flower pressing and the work that you do with that. Cool. So let's jump in.
Yeah. So normally I would be collecting flowers from the garden, but obviously we're in the wrong time of year for that. So got a few that I'm going to show you in a minute, but I've gone for your average kind of bouquet that you get from any type of supermarket or little corner shop.
Fantastic.
So I'm going to start with the unwrapping thing. And normally when you're pressing flowers from a bouquet, you could actually get a few nice days out of it before you went to press them. So
that's good to know. So when you're purchasing your flowers, you don't have to go to press them straight away. No. Enjoy them for a few days. Then once you've had a few days out of them, you can get them ready and prep them for pressing. Cool.
And it gets them in the best condition as well, because some of them might not be quite blooming enough yet.
Yes, that's true. A lot of flowers you buy them so they're gonna bloom while they're out, aren't they?
They're a bit closed up still, which obviously doesn't make it the best for pressing. But you also don't want them too far gone, because then they're not pressing in the best condition either.
So does the ability to purchase flowers from a supermarket or a garage, things like that, does that kind of allow flower pressing to become an activity that you can do all year round?
Yeah, actually, and it's really good to be able to support your local florist, which is a bit hard at the moment because a lot of them are only doing click and collect and very specific, whereas normally you could go in and have a really good conversation and see all of the flowers, which I think is really important.
Yeah, my conversation with florists are, can I have some nice ones, please? So that's about as far as my knowledge of flowers go. I'll tell a lie, I did get some gypsophilia recently. So I've learned one flower type recently. Which
is actually coincidentally the one that I couldn't get for today.
Oh, really?
Is one of my favourite ones to press.
Oh, really?
So I've got some examples of what it looks like once it's pressed, but it's probably one of the most common that you can get in a bouquet, but it presses absolutely brilliantly.
I was calling it baby's breath, but then I'd go someplace and they looked at you strange, you called it baby's breath. So is it just kind of like, just have two names generally, or is it one that's
I think if you were going into a florist as someone that doesn't work with flowers a lot, you would say baby's breath, and a lot of people would say that as well. So I think most people would have a common understanding that that's what you mean. So these are going to be yours to play with.
Thank you very much. When you're taking them out of the boot bouquet like that, is there are you looking for anything in particular when you're doing it? Do you have to do anything to them, or is it just a case of separating them and putting them in a tray?
Well, it all depends really on why you're pressing them, and if it's for your own artwork, it's basically whatever you kind of like the look of. But obviously, if you're pressing it for somebody else, it's their choice, and you've got to decide what to do with it then, whether it's going to press well or whether you dry it instead, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So the ones that I think are going to press nicely are going to be these ones, and some of the greenery.
Yellow flower.
Yeah, which I'm actually not quite sure what that one is. Irises, they press really nicely. And as you can see, these daffodils are not quite out yet, so they won't be pressed.
So you save them maybe?
Yeah, so they can go in a vase and you can enjoy them until they come out.
How did you get into being interested in pressing flowers?
I thought, like you were saying, we've known each other for quite a while and you've seen me work on many different art projects, but when I started working on the community garden project, Old Town Bloomers, just surrounded by flowers all of the time. Yeah. And I think you start to become fascinated with how to preserve them and how to do a bit more and what artistically you can do with them. We definitely started experimenting a bit then with what you can do with them. We're
definitely going to have a chat more about Old Town Bloomers in a bit, because there's so much cool stuff going on with them, but we'll come back to that in a bit. Yeah, I think when I first met you, or one of the first few art projects that I saw you working on was drawings, a lot of doodles and things like that. The Doodleist was it the Doodleist? Was it
Doodologist?
The Doodologist. Sorry, I was like, as I was saying, I was like, I knew it was something around this, but do you still draw as well?
Yeah, actually, and it's a lot of inspiration. It comes from flowers, and interested in flower fairies. I have to say, I'm a Whitneysian with the fairies when I mean fairies. And I'd take a lot of inspiration from things like that and old botanical illustrations.
Fantastic.
So if you want to grab this one,
I've got it.
Its own. So it's going to seem a bit brutal, but really you're just going to strip all of those bottom leaves away.
Is there any technique to this, or is it just ripping them off? Just ripping them off. Yeah.
You're not really going to be able to use them, especially if anything's wet. Yeah, anything that's going in the flower press, you want to be totally dry.
You want to be totally dry, yeah. It is a little bit wet, down there. That's where it's pulling that off. And if you had, say, like a little bit of wetness on the stands and things like that, is it a case of just literally drying it? Do you know, like towel and things like that, or do you just let it naturally dry before going in?
And really, with anything a stem like this, because it's so thick and woody, I suppose is the best description you could. It's not going to press well.
Yes. Yeah, you'd have to have.
It would probably dry all right, but not something that you would want to use. So then you're just going to chop the end off with your scissors.
Got a pair of scissors here. Chop these off.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So then, probably best to have your little piece of paper
on a piece of paper. I've got this.
So then, because this isn't particularly thick, it would actually press if you pressed it down like that.
Yeah.
But to be a bit more useful for whatever artwork you're going to create, you would do that individually.
Okay, so we're kind of like picking these off individually and putting them on. Any type of pattern, or just something that I would think looks nice?
Yeah, and then evenly space it out.
Evenly space them out, so okay.
And leave a nice white border around the edge.
Okay.
Because obviously as it presses, it will expand slightly as it flattens out, so you want to make sure that they're not touching, because you don't want anything that's going to encourage mould to develop.
I've gone portrait here. You've got landscape.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, doing it a bit different. Yeah. I think I'm gravitating towards, because I know that the press is that way, but it really doesn't matter. Yeah, do a couple more. I've got a couple of leaves on here. Is that still? Yeah,
I know we took a few off before down below.
They'll actually press really nicely.
Fantastic. And so we're actually going to have a look at a couple of different types of ways that you can press flowers. Is that right today?
Yeah, we'll preserve them to dry them, because you're going to use them for different things. So if you want to put that out the way and bring your press towards you when you're finished. I'd probably say that's probably a little too many.
A bit too many?
So you can put that onto
take this one back?
Yeah.
If we put them in there, okay.
So then you have your press in front of you.
Okay, let me move this over here.
And take your lid off.
So these presses look well worn. Are these,
Yes.
these
So
how
one that
would
you're
these
using,
come from?
Yeah, the one that you're using is from a studio mate, Mima. So she normally supplies me with flowers as well. So
Oh wow,
yeah,
that's a good contact.
yeah. Because so normally a lot of the flowers that I press, I've either been foraged by myself responsibly in community garden that I grow in, or in other people's gardens. Actually, people are very generous, or people ask if I'm interested in pressing things, and will, like, if their ivy needs trimming and things like that, they'll do some cuttings and bring them into me.
Oh yeah, I've got a couple of bushes that could do this. I don't know how good they'd be for pressing, but if you ever
It's always worth trying. So you're gonna have to put a layer of cardboard down first.
layer of cardboard down. And is there anything special about the cardboard that we're putting down
No,
here?
actually, it's another way of recycling, especially if everyone has been using
I'm
Amazon.
about to say I can see a few Amazon.
Amazon quite a bit. Then this is a good way of using it responsibly. So you want to create a nice little base layer.
Lovely.
And then you're going to put your flowers on top of that. Then you're going to get another piece of paper.
Yeah, I put mine.
If you've hidden it on yourself like I have.
I've hidden it on myself. Yeah. Oops. There we go.
Then you're going to put it on top. You don't have to, but I do like to smooth it over.
Lovely.
It's almost like you're replicating when you first put that heavy book down. So then you're going to get another piece of cardboard
Another piece of cardboard.
and put it on top.
Oh, I'm going paper, not cardboard.
Yeah.
Here
That
we
is
go.
all about protecting the next layer. So if anything happened to go wrong with the first ones, mould will set in because it just can happen.
Okay.
You're just protecting it and it's increasing the pressure going on it. So put that on top.
So we've gone cardboard and then paper, or it's quite a thick paper that we've got, so like almost a little bit.
It's actually the same cartridge paper that Rachel used for the bubble printing.
Okay, fantastic.
It's a really nice quality one. And I've seen people use a kitchen towel before, which I think in their brain they think, oh, it's nice and absorbent.
Yeah.
It will take the moisture, but it can lead to mould, and it will also leave imprints in your flowers, because obviously once they're pressed, they will take any detail of what base they're on.
So we're avoiding kitchen paper for this rule,
Yeah.
but if people have got kind of like printer paper and things like that, that would all look okay.
So say if you're going to use printer paper, you've just got to change your paper a lot more often.
Okay.
So I think people think that you do it, you close the press, and that's it. But in reality, you need to check it at least once a week. When Rachel and I went to the Natural History Museum a couple of years ago, we spoke to an expert that was looking after the specimens. Yeah. And he happened to be like an expert in about how many different things, Rachel? It was zoology, geology and stuff, and he was prepping some beetle specimens ready to get back on the display, but we ended up talking about preservation. I said, oh, I press flowers, and he said, oh, if you want to do it properly, change your paper every day. And I was like, oh, that's a great piece of advice, but that's not going to happen.
It's your full-time job.
So from a Natural History Museum point of view, if you're taking it seriously, you should be changing your paper every day. So then you've got your next piece of paper ready on top. So we're going to go for these ones now. So I think you say elastromeria, but I'm sure somebody will comment and say that I've said that wrong. So if you feel the stem, that's really thick.
Yes, it is.
And then if you feel it higher up, I like to use the word fleshy.
Yeah, fleshy.
So that means that it's going to be quite moisture filled. So we want to get rid of that.
Okay.
So it seems quite brutal, but you're just chopping it all off, really.
Okay. While we're doing this, I think we're going to nip over to have a look at Paul. Paul, do we have any questions or comments coming through?
Yeah, we've got lots of comments coming through from people saying hello and where they're from. I put out a couple of questions, so I was asking people what their favourite flower was. A lot of people saying it's a difficult choice to make and they don't want to make it. So we've had some roses and all that kind of typical flower. Well, not typical flowers, but you know, the general typical choices. Yeah. But somebody's asked, which I need to ask, is can you use ordinary paper? So what types of paper is best for when you're flower pressing?
Yeah, like we briefly mentioned then about printer paper. It's not the best, but you can use it. Also, if you get some really cheap watercolour paper, that's a really nice one. It's just that has a bit of a level of thickness that you want, because when they're pressing, sometimes they can stick to it. And some gentle pressure in. Like one of my favourite tools is my tweezers, which picture hidden in here somewhere. Which here they are.
There we go.
And when you pull it off the paper, if it's really thin paper, you'll damage the flower and the paper.
Right.
And it'll stick to it. So if you use a better quality piece of paper, it's better for everything, really.
Cool.
So now you've got them like this. Oh, you're already ahead of me, yeah.
Try.
So the same type of layout, but because these are bigger flowers, you want to have a little bit more space in between it. So I'd probably, for this size one, I'd probably go for 4.
What about with these? Because we were saying before, there's we decided not to go with the daffodils because they hadn't quite come through yet. On some of these, we've got kind of, let's see if Andrew can pick it up there. We've got kind of like the main buds. Flower that's through, but yeah, we've got the buds coming through here.
So,
would you try and take them off, or would you just try and...
So if you have a feel of it,
yeah,
it's quite soft, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I would say that was fine.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, lovely. And again, we put in a little bit of a border around the outside as well, so they've got a bit more space to push out to.
It just means that when you're pressing it, there's more of a seal around it, and the less air that will get into it, in my Woodnesian air, less air that will get into it means the better the flowers will do and the nicer that they'll press.
I have been working in Widnes now for, I think, about 13 years, and Halton in general, going between Widnes and Runcorn, and I find it really funny how kind of like accents can change and things. I've got no doubt there's several things that I've picked up over my time of being here. I think I'm a little bit like a accent chameleon. I just kind of like, wherever I am, I slowly pick up the twangs and things like that. Yeah, so I'm sure you'll be in good company. I can't even hear myself saying them anymore. So, yeah.
So now with this one, you're going to get your piece of paper again?
I've gone with 4 on mine.
I've gone with 4.
Is that all right? Yeah. Lovely.
It's really tempting to put a lot more on, but it just won't do you any favours when they're ready. So now...
It's so exciting just looking at it, just going, I wonder what it's going to look. You kind of like, as you put them out and as you put them down, then you kind of like putting them away.
I also cross my fingers and hope that it's going to be nice. Well, what I will say actually with these ones, because they're a white, I normally stay away from white ones because people have expectations of that loveliness staying. And sometimes you will and you'll get it and they'll press into it like an antique cream, but sometimes it can just go brown. And it doesn't mean that they're not beautiful in their own lovely way, but like Rachel said with the fabric painting, brown's not always an ideal colour, but they're beautiful, and like with the markings and stuff, I would say that they'll come through.
Yes.
So this will fade maybe into a browny kind of yellow. And that doesn't mean that it'll be a horrible colour. It just means that it's not going to be white.
Yeah. So just don't expect it to be white more when it comes out.
Exactly. Yeah. So now you're going to put your piece of paper on, and now you're going to hear probably a little bit of a crunch if you smooth over it. You'll hear it. So you'll hear the little crunch.
I like that your terminology for it is smooth over. I feel like I'm just crushing.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm doing the smoothing over correctly. Or,
We can't hear any flowers screaming yet. Yeah. So it feels a little bit cruel, but it means you are keep preserving them forever, or at least a good couple of 100 years.
Wow.
So now you're putting your
It's like a flower sandwich, like a big.
It is a flower sandwich.
Big
That's
flower
exactly
sandwich,
it. Because if you've noticed, obviously these bolts are quite high and these ones are high. It means that you can go quite high with it, and then your pressure when you're pushing it down means that you can fill it up. So normally when you're doing it, you could have little post-it notes or pieces of paper stuck out.
That's a good idea.
So that you're saying what's on each layer. Yeah. Or if you're more about the date that you press them, when you put your lid on, I normally then put a post-it note on top of it going what flowers are in there and what the date is that you pressed it, just so that you know.
Yeah, and so I guess if you were, because we were mentioning about changing the paper and things like that when you're pressing it, so I'm guessing that if you did the date, it could be useful for that because you could just update that date once you've changed it and things like that.
Yeah, exactly,
Perfect.
So
Brilliant.
then you're going to get another piece of paper ready?
Yeah, I'm making it half of myself. I think I keep, that's a different type. These are still, I thought I'd moved them to a different location.
Now I think you want to try some of the greenery.
This twig, as I would call it.
Because I seem to have gave it all to you. Can you cut it in half and give me some
Yes,
back?
of course. Here we go. Okay.
Might want to use your scissors if it's tough.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Let's do that.
Because they're surprisingly resilient.
That was a much smarter idea than.
So the same with it. Again, the stem's is quite thick. But if you have a look at the ones, the individual little branches, that's nice and green.
Yes.
And it should feel soft if you feel them.
Yes. These ones.
Along the little.
Yeah.
So I would say that means it's going to press well.
So we're going to be kind of cutting from almost at the very ends of them when we're doing it.
So with these ones, which I'll have a look at some of my work later, I work very small. So people are pressing big things, but in reality, these little leaves, I would use them individually in pieces to create words and letters.
How, if you were doing a kind of your average press, I'm sure it changes depending on what you're doing, things like that. How many layers would you normally be with on a girl?
I would normally have your press full, this press full, and as we were talking before, which I didn't bring today, my mega press full.
So that ties us in actually quite nicely. So obviously, I know we mentioned it earlier. You're an artist a lot like the way that Rachel is an artist from Hazelhurst Studios.
We're trying to be.
So we've got.
I can't sew though.
So
even remotely.
Well, I think that's one of the really nice things about Hazelhurst, and when we work with you and we've spoken in the past and stuff, is that everyone is an independent artist there and has their own things that they specialise in, things that they're interested in. It must be a very inspiring place to work in, to kind of see the work that other people are coming up with while you're going through it.
Absolutely, and I think it's that being able to ask other people opinions on pieces and collaborating on stuff. Some of the things me and Rachel have worked with, I've got some crossovers. We've been playing around with cyanotypes, which is an early form of photography based on blueprints.
Oh yes, is that where you kind of expose it to light and then the shadow almost makes the picture? When I've seen that happening before, you get some really beautiful shapes out of it. Yeah.
And Rachel wanted to play around with some stuff to see whether it worked on fabric, which it does. And I was really intrigued with how it would work with florals and things, because one of the original artists behind it, she used it a lot for seaweed samples. Yeah. So in the 1870s she did it. But me and Rachel also did a series of videos for the HPAN, the Halton Primary Art Network that Rachel mentioned before. But we also did a video on cyanotypes.
Fantastic.
And that's so you can hop over and look at those as well.
One of the things I was talking about to you the other day, I stumbled across the blog on the Hazelhurst website. It's got so many interesting and cool updates and links to videos and things like that you've been up to. I definitely recommend people checking that out. So the website is www.hazelhurststudios.co.uk, and inside the blog section there are loads of cool blog posts about different projects you're coming up with, things that you're doing and stuff like that. I was looking at it the other day and I was just amazed because most people's website, when you go onto that blog page, you see the one from 5 years ago that they've done. So you guys have done really well to keep it going.
I think we've worked really hard lately to make sure that we're doing that, because we just realised that everybody looks at things in different ways, and we'd moved away a bit from blog posts because we thought that people didn't really have the time or interest to look at blog posts anymore. We thought it was all going to be Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. But we realised that people wanted to know more in depth what we were up to, and to document it for ourselves, because all of a sudden we're in 2021 and I thought it was 2018 like yesterday. And we're looking back at some of the projects that we did, and time just whizzes by.
I think there's something really nice about that with blog posts. In that we love social media. We're actually going out on social media right now, doing things like this. But what's really nice about with the blog post is that ability to really make it your own. Really, you decide how many photos go in with it, the location of them, and things like that. And I think that there's still a place for all those types of things moving forward. I believe, Paul, we've got a question or a statement come through from somebody. Is that correct?
I'd like to say there's a lot of questions coming through that I'm trying to work my way through, and I'm going to get to you now. Laura's been asking what size of the press you're using, and did you buy it, and is it ready-made? Just about your press, really.
Yeah, so this one has been made for me. But if you go to your local timber merchant, you'll just specify what type of wood you want, and they'd say that you'd go for something between 6 and 8 mil MDF or marine plywood. have 2 boards cut, have the holes drilled, and get the bolts from a hardware store, and you've got a press. Just make sure that you varnish your wood beforehand. But you can obviously buy them online. Buy them online. This size press, I use it to take A4 paper. It's just easier. The set similar for Sean as well, and the next size up one that I've got, I'd go for, it's probably about A3 size paper that I'm using, but it's all then you've got to have the cardboard, but obviously you can hack down some Amazon boxes and Joe do the same.
Depending on what size you want to use, isn't it?
The most expensive thing, obviously, if you're doing them yourselves, is the bolts. They end up being quite expensive because they're obviously big ones. So they end up being about 30 quid for a set of bolts like this. But yeah, it can be really effective, and obviously you can use books. I've got a big pile of books that I brought with me as well, and I know people use books and they use it in between the pages, but that can be quite risky from a mould point of view. But if you actually have your layer of books and just use the same sandwich method, where on your bottom book you lay your cardboard first, your paper, then your cardboard, and then your heavy book on top, and repeat the process. That's just as effective. Just make sure that you've got lots of pressure on top.
That's great. So that's a great piece of advice. If you're watching this at home and you wanted to have a go and you're thinking, oh, I'd love to do some of this, but I don't have a press yet. I could order one, or I could try and get one made and things like that. But if you've got books already and a couple of Amazon boxes or any other boxes, then get yourself some books and layer them up with the pressure between each one. I've got to admit, when I think of flower pressing, the first thing that comes to my mind is books, and I have no idea. I don't know if that's from like media or films or things like that in the past, but I always think about the flowers being pressed in between pages on books, and I've got no concept of where that comes from or why I think that's the way that it's done, but just it's lodged in there for some reason.
And I think that can be quite Instagram pretty as well sometimes. And I see some of the pictures and I'm like, oh, that's pressed really well. And then I'm like, oh, if they used a flower press and then took the page out and then put it inside the book to make it look probably easier than it is.
Almost definitely, surely. It's the answer for that with all things. It's like when people talk about the pictures of food, isn't it? Where it's like, you wouldn't actually eat it the way that it looks on the pictures and things like that. But no, so fantastic. So I'm how many layers have I got now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think I've got 6 layers in. That's fantastic. So am I going for another piece of paper on top of this one?
I would,
Yeah, lovely.
So it's quite therapeutic.
Very. I'm really enjoying it.
And it's a really nice way of.
I didn't push down on this one. I need to feel the crunch.
Got to get the pressure. Got to crunch it.
Yeah.
And even if there's some flowers that I don't like pressing myself, which is your roses and stuff, because they're really thick flowers and individual petals, then they rot down quite quickly. So one of the other ways I'm going to show you is another nice way of preserving your bigger flowers.
Okay, fantastic.
Like your tulips, which I actually think your tulips would probably press well.
I love a tulip, to be honest with you. It feels like it's just the vibrancy of
the colour, isn't it? But what I was surprised with was irises. So I test pressed these a couple of times last year, and obviously it feels a bit brutal because you're chopping everything off again. And you're feeling the crunch, but actually they end up being quite a thin flower, and when you're looking in the middle, if I don't know if you can see that.
You'll get Andy, could you get in there and have a quick look at that flower for us? Thank you very much.
When you're looking in the middle of an iris, which I don't think people do, there's nothing there.
Yeah, so
that when you're pressing it.
Whereas, like you were saying for rose, they kind of like they all pack to the middle, so like that.
It's dense. So when you're placing it down, that one's probably a little bit more open than I normally would. So when it's going to press now, it's going to fold over. So you can be a bit brutal. So you're hearing the crunch. Yeah. So do you want to attempt one?
Yeah, I've got one. If you have a go at one of those. So I'm taking it from towards the top, aren't I? Yeah. So that's I definitely know what you mean about the kind of like where you suddenly feel the fleshy bit now.
So if you look at an iris, you've got this top bit here and this bit here, and that's the kind of shape that people like. So when you're thinking about pressing it, you'd probably press it this way so that the top petal would be up like that and these petals go out, so then it is the iris shape. I
think that's something that I've probably not been paying enough attention to, is thinking how I lie it down is how it's going to be shaped when we go through to it. So yeah, that's definitely something to bear in mind when I'm doing it.
And that's why when you can, it's manipulating it really.
Yeah.
that when you're doing the first initial squishing, you're manipulating it almost into the shape that you want it to press as.
These beautiful purples and yellows, aren't they? These go so well together.
The colour stays.
And the colour stays fantastic.
Pretty much.
I think I'm going to give this one a solo press, this one, so we can give
then
it
you're gonna hear the crunch.
Let me get my piece of paper. One of the things we've been talking about a little bit, and you kind of touched on it then, is well-being and mental health, you know, and around creativity, and how some creative processes are very kind of wild, and you're very, very hands-on, whereas others you can really take your time with an experiment. And this definitely feels like it's on the. I'm sure there are some frustrating elements of it, but feels like something that you could, you know, be listening to music to, potentially a podcast, maybe even have something on TV as you're kind of doing it in the background and getting. Do you find it to be a calming or frustrating? How does it work for you? How do you find it?
Yeah, the majority of the time it's really calming. It is stressful when the flowers belong to somebody else, I'm not going to lie. When it's somebody's wedding.
Yeah.
And they're absolutely stunning flowers, but you know that they were already at their best on the wedding day, and you have to have them quick.
I thought you were meaning like you'd nick the flowers.
No,
there's someone else's flower. Yeah, you've got to be quick. You've got to get in.
So the florist has worked really hard to make them special for the wedding day.
That's such a great idea though. You've got your flowers for your wedding day, and you're wanting to make them last afterwards.
Yeah, so you're pressing them and you turn them into some of the floral letter stuff or into something else. So normally you'd only have a couple of days, and this time, and I've had ones that have a little bit gone, I would say, but you can save them still. And there's lots of greeneries, and yet again, you talk about the gypsophila and stuff. It can take some damage. Like one couple brought theirs back from Italy for me on EasyJet. They sent it back with the parents while they were staying on for the honeymoon. Their parents brought the flowers back for me. And they were still lovely.
That's a good. I'm hope fingers crossed. I'm getting our kind of celebration part of my wedding in February, and I never thought about the idea of pressing the flowers and having it as a piece of artwork that you could keep. Well, that's a great idea.
It's doing something with it. So like we were saying about the cyanotypes or printing or doing something with it. It's then you at least use the flowers for something else.
Definitely, yeah.
That's the interesting part about it, because flowers are all about memories, I think, and that's probably the conversation started with a lot of things, because they either associate it with memories of growing up, favourite grandparents, just the colours, or spring coming, and I think everybody wants a bit of colour and happiness in the life at the moment.
Definitely. Again, one of the things we've been drawing attention to is the similarities between the different creators and different artists that we've had on, and we were talking about with the shared reading session that we did around, one of the things they talked about was smell, and how they were describing a smell, and that could transport you back and things like that. So definitely with flowers you've got the visual of them, but you've also got the sense and things like that. Now I'm guessing you lose a little bit of the sense, the smell of them as you're pressing them, but definitely that there's something lovely in creative processes, in that idea of transporting you to another place, another time, another location.
Well, when you're talking about smells, that's what I discovered last year as well, is that I can't smell freesias. And if you don't know what freesias are, they're like sweet peas, and if you don't know what sweet peas are, I can't help you. But apparently they smell absolutely amazing. And it was Rachel that pointed out how nicely they smell, and I was like, I can't smell them, and then she was like, does that mean that you've got COVID? And I was like, I can smell everything else. I'd literally just been in the garden smelling roses, because it was such a lovely day, and I was smelling roses, and I'm like, I can't smell this flower at all. And she was like, it's the most heady, honey, lovely, isn't it? Floral smell.
Maybe you've got dyslexia. That's what we're finding out before. We can't see magic eyes.
Yeah,
Maybe there's
And they look, and there's a big similarity between them and freesias, I think. And sweet peas, the scented variety, have got a beautiful smell to them, and I could smell those. Yeah. But then these freesias, I couldn't. I just thought, and it was just like a weird oddity, and I think it's like a genetic throwback, and there's a very small percentage of people that can't smell them. Really? Yeah, James Wong who's on Gardener's Question Time, and he was an expert at Kew Gardens, he'd tweeted about it, saying that he couldn't, and then that I'd just read all of the conversation about all these other people that could, and then that leads on to all the other words, where like whether you can smell asparagus or the coriander, whether you love the taste of coriander or think that it tastes like soap.
Yeah,
I think all of that stuff is.
I'm on the loving coriander.
Yeah, me
side,
too.
so
Yeah.
That's really interesting. It reminds me of that the dress that the was it black and gold or pink, blue and pink?
Blue,
I can't remember. Yeah, I think I was seeing black and gold all the time, and I was kind of like, and you kind of you have the moments going, no, it's definitely this colour. You kind of thinking, is that person playing a trick on me? Like, is this just a massive troll from loads of people?
Yeah, because you just can't see what they're seeing, because that's just not what your brain works. How your brain works. So before we go on to looking at some of the other techniques, I'm just going to talk about these snowdrops.
Please do, yeah.
So these snowdrops are being grown in the community garden. So I'm allowed to take these because I helped grow them. But when you're thinking about wildflowers and foraging, you've really got to do your research about what ones you should be taking.
So don't just go out there and just take whatever you see out there.
So on the website Plant Life, I think it is, there's a link to that which I can send into the comments later.
Definitely,
and they give you a whole list of plants that really you shouldn't. So, and especially when it comes around to bluebell times, because of our native bluebell species, we need them. And our insects and everything else of the biodiversity cycle that comes from them, they need those flowers more than we ever do. And we need to look at them and enjoy them instead of
it's
harvesting
interesting
them from the wild, even no matter how much you want to press them.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because you would just kind of think if you saw something, that they're growing wildly, I'm not harming anyone. It's not like it's someone's garden or anything like that. But it's more about the kind of wildlife and habitats that you're accidentally destroying by taking them. Is that the kind of reason why? That's really interesting. I would never have thought about that when doing it.
You've just got to be careful. I think it's taking the odd one. I don't see it as doing any big harm, but people take great swathes of them, and then those very specific insects and animals that then thrive on that particular patch is gone, and that life cycle stops. So that's definitely something to consider.
Well, before we jump into that, let's have a little bit of a chat about the community garden in Old Town Blooms, because that's a fantastic space, and it's growing and it's changed over the years. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what it is and how it got started?
So Old Town Bloom started in 2014, and it was just meant to be a 2-week pop-up garden project. So we'd got some funding from one of the local town team funding pots, and it was just very much about creating a little celebration that was just going to be 2 weeks. So we worked with schools to decorate some pots, some old giant bean tins actually, and tuna ones, which I spent a lot of time washing out, which is disgusting. Drilling them and discovering my love of spray paint, which I do love it. And we created a beautiful space with some amazing volunteers. Got involved the first year. We just an unused bit of land, a couple of 100 yards away from the studio, and it wasn't used for anything. It just had a bench in there, and that was it. And it's where the big mural is on Corn High Street. So it was a bit of green, a path in the middle, and the mural, and then nothing else. So we thought, we'll put a little display there and just see how that goes. So we did that. It went really well, and people were like, "Oh, what's happening next?" And I was like, "Oh no, there isn't a next." And then you're like, "Oh, what have we started here?" So then we did it again the next year, part of Hazelhurst and other artists getting involved. And then it was followed up with, "Oh, what's next?" Because people were really curious about the fact that we were putting some beautiful things in the garden and amazing planted up displays, and people were like, "Oh, are you worried about it? What happens to them?" And I was like, "Well, nothing's happened so far in terms of like antisocial behaviour and stuff." And it was, well, why not? Why can't we make an effort to make an area look beautiful? And then we thought, well, let's turn it into a proper garden. Instead of just being a temporary one, let's make a commitment to do something more. So then we got some Tesco Bags of Help funding, and that allowed us to work with a local artist, Angela Sidwell, to create this little free library, which is a carved book tree, where you can leave a book and take a book, and that's been brilliant. Also a raised bed and a storytelling circle, and that just kind of brought the garden alive and gave it a structure that wasn't there before. And then from there we've just been adding stuff into it ever since.
I remember when the free library, outside library, got commissioned and got put in there, and just some of the lovely pictures that were being posted online from people using it, taking books from it, adding books to it, but also using the space in the openness and being able to use it. If you're from Halton or Runcorn, I'm sure you'll have seen it on the high street, but it is a really nice little patch of greenery that brings a smile to your face every time you go past it, and it's brilliant. I remember unfortunately one of the places where I used to live, when they dared to put flowers on the streets, that they were throwing everywhere, and things like that. And so it's just fantastic to hear that the community have seen this space and really appreciated it, and it's not been something that's been vandalized or anything like that.
It really is, and the book empties and fills itself. Yeah, we have a hand in it a couple of times through the year just to see how it is, because we have a bit of issues with when it rains, the door swells and doesn't open and close that well. Like, this is our risky months, and unfortunately a few books get damaged by the weather. But other than that, and we know that all throughout lockdown people really used it a lot. I definitely, as we're locked down currently at the moment, and fingers crossed we'll be able to get out a little bit more and stuff, but I'm sure at the moment it's a lot of families, what they're looking for with children, particularly during half term as well, is sometimes just a different space, isn't it? A different area, something that is a little bit different to the monotony of being at home and things. And I almost put my cardboard straight down to it. I've got it. Sandwich,
I've got it. But no, and so being able to offer people that type of space is brilliant. Now, I know earlier when we were talking to Rachel, we talked about it being used as well as a space for the exhibition from Halton Draws, and the brilliant work about that project, and the drawings that have been submitted and the work from the students that you've got with you on at the moment. What's the plans for the garden going forward?
That's obviously been an issue because we've had a year and a bit nearly of not being able to meet properly in the same way that we would like to. So next month, in March, we're going to do a series of online sessions. We got some funding from the government to work on a project about connecting people, or reconnecting us as volunteers, just making sure that we stay together, even though we can't be together in person, but we can work together on plans and ideas online. So we're just going to do a few basic gardening sessions every Monday in March that people can book onto, and then we're going to have a lovely doodle along with Quirky Bird, who does amazing little watercolour doodle alongs, and we're going to centre it around hope and gardening and create some beautiful pictures together. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then we're going to plan to see whether we can do Written in Bloom again this year, because we've done that and got outstanding every year that we've done it, and we have a little theme, and that brings a smile to your face. Definitely. So hopefully we can actually get out and get compost again.
Fantastic. And with Old Town Bloomers, if people are looking for more information on it, is it? I'm sure there'll be things mentioned on the Hazelhurst website, but it has some of its own social medias, doesn't it? Do you know those ones for Old Town Bloomers?
Old Town Bloomers. That's what it is. For all of them, it's nice and easy. There are no different ones. We've got website, Instagram, Twitter and Facebook.
Does it have its own website? Sorry, oh wow. Yep. Sorry, I assumed it was part of the Hazelhurst one.
And we have regular blog posts written by the blooming old gardener who has to stay anonymous to respect their privacy. But yeah, so we do that, and we at least a monthly blog at the moment, and then a bit more regularly on the social media side of things.
So you said you've got a bed there. Is that a raised bed? Is that flowers or do you veg or what's the?
So in the raised bed it's flowers, but then also container base, because we can't dig down because it's still a site of a demolished building. So all along the back and along the wonky wall, because it's damaged, so we call it the wonky wall. We grow vegetables and other plants, but we grow chard, kale, cabbage, radishes, beans, carrots, everything. Obviously it's winter time now, so there's cabbage and kale and I think some chard left at the moment. But then as the year goes on, we try and put more in, but we're trying to go for a bit more sustainable planting at the moment. So we're going to build an alpine rockery, because that will take less water in.
Yeah.
So we've got one of the lovely volunteers donated a load of sandstone. So with that, we're going to build the rockery and get some sustainable plants in there as well. And then we're going after some funding so that we get more raised beds in, so it just makes it a bit easier to manage for everybody.
Sounds like you've got some real
Yeah.
good plans to move on. I got offered an allotment during lockdown, but I just didn't quite have time to be able to get it. Yeah, it was such a commitment, Jill, for something like that.
Commitment is definitely the word. You've got to think about the watering side of things. So somebody's either going to be having to do it later on in the night when it's hot, or early in the morning, and that's hard going.
Yeah.
Especially when the weather's brutal. So now we're going to put the lid on.
Fantastic. So,
but this is going to be a bit competitive now.
Oh, okay.
Right. So have you got your
Is
little
it a race?
pot? Yeah. So have you got your little pot with your bolts?
Yes.
So we're going to put. We won't start until this is on. You do a nice little squish as well.
Oh yeah, you
Yeah, do you hear
get
the
quite
crunch,
a satisfying crunch. Yeah.
So if you look, there's still quite some volume. So when you're pressing your flowers, that's when it's a good indication of how good your press is that you can't see any gaps. And then when you're applying the pressure on, now that's going to close even more. So it's probably going to go down about half the size again in volume.
All right, well.
So it's going to start from now.
All right, so we're going washers, then nuts on, how we going?
Which makes a nice, oh no, I've already got advantage.
You what? I was like, how fast are you screwing them on there? Doing 4 at once.
Well, you didn't win the painting, so you might
No.
miss.
Well, I'm not. I've got 1 on so far, so it's not a. And how tight are we? Are we going literally till we can't?
Get them all equal first.
Yeah.
And then you're going to go around and put a bit more pressure on.
That's like it's like when you're building anything, isn't it? Really, you don't want to like get the first one on really tight and then find out you've aligned it slightly wrong.
Yeah, and sometimes, like depending on what table it is, you might want to look and see whether it's level.
Would you use a kind of an actual level potentially when you're doing it then, or
Just a look, because
look.
Depending on the thickness of the flowers that you're doing, some are going to have some volume, so you are going to have to put a bit more pressure on.
I'm going to end up cross-threading this. I'm trying to go so far. Yeah. It's the press's fault. It's the. It reminds me a bit of a tofu press.
Oh, I've not tried that.
It's just smaller. You just put tofu inside it to make it a little bit harder sometimes when you're cooking it, things like that. But yeah, you'd have to have a massive piece of tofu for something this size.
Is that going to be the next MakeFest then?
MakeFest tofu, maybe.
Tofu special.
Big up butter cake cupcakes, I think they call it, from the last MakeFest. They did.
Sam,
yeah, Sam. Yeah, she did some fantastic cupcakes for us, and we were decorating those at the last one. So I'd love to have some cooking and some baking. Yeah, it's. I think that's the whole thing.
So give it a press in the middle.
Yeah.
See how much.
Yeah, just.
So you push it down there and then tighten it more.
Then you tighten it more, and that's the key. Yeah, Sam. Yeah, big up if you're watching. She's going to be doing. I commissioned her to do my wedding cake as well, so I look forward to seeing that as well. So, all about celebrating all different types of. It's makers. It sounds such a strange word, doesn't it? Because everyone's got their own specific art form and thing, but it is truly one of my favourite things about it. Kind of going around and seeing the different stuff. So now when I'm pressing it down, I'm not getting as much of a.
So, and I think this is why people are reluctant about changing the paper because it feels like a faff.
Yeah.
But if you leave this now for 4 weeks and don't check it, you run the risk of mould having set in even in one, and then that's seeping through on the others. So get it open and change the paper at least once during the 4-week process.
So that's how. So like to go from beginning to end, it's a 4-week process.
Some people will say 4 weeks, but I would say 6 weeks.
6 weeks, and we're looking to change at least once a week.
Yeah.
Is that what we're saying?
Yeah.
But if you're from somewhere once a day,
the
Natural History Museum, once a day.
Then,
I feel like I just want to keep. I feel like I don't know if I'm treating it like a torture device here. I feel like just got the urge to keep tightening it. Yeah.
Maybe after a day or two, you want to have a switch of it and see whether there's any more room to tighten it more, then feel free to do that.
What about the type of environments that we're keeping in this? You know, we're trying to keep it away from sunlight or heat and things like that. Where's the best place to store it while we're waiting?
Dry.
Dry.
Dry, not too hot, not too cold.
Lovely. So not like a laundry room or something like that. Yeah.
Moisture, and that moisture is obviously the
that's
one.
That's the enemy. That's what we're trying to keep you away from. Fantastic. Let's have a quick look at this on the side. Wow.
So that's good. Yeah. So have a look at some of the ones of what they look. So when we were talking about the baby's breath before, it's gypsophilia. So that's a mixture of stuff. I'll show you what it looks like on its own. So you can get a pink. This is called a double pink gypsophilia.
Is this our blue Peter?
Yes.
This has been done. Here's one we've done earlier.
And you can get absolutely tons of it, and it presses so well.
Lovely.
See how it keeps the colour as well.
Yeah, they're really pink and nicely coming through.
So if you're working really small, these are just perfect for the details because they are just tiny little flowers and you really get that floral element.
That's something that we're going to be looking at in a little bit, isn't it? The some of your work that you use the flowers with once they're done. Like for myself, I might be one of those people that just kind of goes, oh, I've just got a lovely pressed flower and that. But what you do is within your art form is once they're pressed, then manipulate them into lots of different things.
And if you're talking about the snowdrops,
oh wow, look at that.
Then that is how it presses.
Absolutely beautiful.
So this would be normally your bright yellow poppy, and this is what colour.
That's how it presses once it's been done. So interesting. So it's like you said, it's not about it necessarily changing to be a negative thing. It's just different to how you think it might do it, because it's a beautiful almost. I don't even know what kind of colour you would call it. Almost like a
blushy orange.
Yeah, blushy orange. Yeah, lovely.
So they were this yellow, that yellow. As yellow as the tulip. And then they fade into that colour. But anything normally purple.
Purple sticks. Purple sticks.
And these are over a year old.
Oh, and those are the ones that we were doing. Are they the ones that the purple and yellow ones that we were
doing?
No,
so I'll
this
show
is a
you.
different type.
So these are the freesias.
Freesias.
And these are the sweet peas. So look at the colour on that.
Wow, that's very vibrant, isn't it? The dark, very rich purple coming through from that. Just before we look at that next one, Paul, have we had any comments coming through? Fantastic. Let's have a look, listen to Paul and see what the audience have been saying, see what our viewers have been having a chat about.
Yes, we've got lots of questions coming through. Helen asked if you were pressing flower heads, have you got any tips if you want if so they can see more inside of the flower, you know, so you can see the head of the flower rather than just the leaves?
Yeah,
or the petals, sorry.
It depends on what flowers you mean. So when we go on to the next technique, I think that's going to be best for talking about flower heads.
Okay.
So when we hop over to that.
And we've also got, if you're pressing can you press seaweed? And if so, is there any tips on pressing seaweed?
Definitely drying it.
Yeah.
Definitely drying it, absolutely, because there's going to be tons of moisture. So you're going to dry it, and actually the dehydrator that I've got here is going to be a good technique, and then the next technique is going to be good for seaweed as well. Okay. But if you can get it dry and started pressing it, you could rough press it, which is what I do if you're in a hurry with something, and just get it in your paper and do a sandwich quickly, just to dry it out maybe for a couple of days, and when you're sure that it's pretty dry, then you're getting in a press where you're applying a lot more pressure. That should work really well with seaweed.
And one other question that's popped up a few times is if you're using very vibrant coloured flowers, is there a tip to keep that vibrant colour when you're pressing them?
Yes, which I'll get onto that in a minute.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's almost popped up a few times, so I thought I better get in there.
I think that is obviously because it's sometimes the colours that people are really attracted to, and are very disappointed if they don't stay. So there are a few things. But like we were talking about the irises that we've just pressed. So this is how it looks. And I'm using the tweezers, but it is quite resilient.
Quite strong, yeah.
But really, if you're handling stuff,
you want to get the tweezers.
Yeah.
Is that because of the kind of acid and things like that on your hands, or is it just to kind of like to make sure you don't accidentally knock them and things like that?
A bit of both, really, because obviously there's still a form of living thing, and as soon as it's back out again and it's away from the press, you're back into the air, and humidity and stuff will kick in,
Yeah.
and your hands aren't a sterile thing.
Yeah.
So the less that you're handling them, the better, really.
So back at the studio at Hazelhurst, do you have like almost like a kind of a full library then of
Yeah.
different flowers that you can go back to, and
Yeah.
you kind of go, well, do you know what, actually I think this one would look nice in this situation, and this one would look nice in this one.
Absolutely. So a lot of the things like when I'm growing, so Aquilegia is one of the ones that I grow.
Wow, that one looks.
Um,
Do you know what we were talking then about the colour of flowers, and obviously
Yeah.
the smell is one of the things that people get, but the shape of that one then I think that one looks really, really nice, the way you can kind of see the petals have gone out and things.
When I was talking before about the botanical illustrations and the way that you think about flower fairies and stuff like that, this is the flowers that inspire it. I think you look at them, you think they could almost come alive and be something. But these press really well, and they may look quite fleshy. Like the irises probably do. They look like a big bold flower, but they don't hold the moisture in the same way that a tulip would. So it is trial and error, and I'm saying there's nothing that you can't try.
Yeah.
But just be prepared to be disappointed.
Yeah.
It's just the better way to do it.
It's interesting again. Like so many of the people that have come on have had that same mentality through all art forms in terms of give it a go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like just get out there, try it. Don't worry if you've not got a press. Have a go using the books. Maybe you get yourself. I don't want to jump too far ahead, but I can see we've got some smaller presses here at the front as well. So they don't even have to be as big as the ones that we're using here. You can get involved and give it a go and see what you like. And undoubtedly with any type of art form or creative practice, at the beginning it's going to be such a learning stage from it, and
I think it's use as many as possible. It's like you get your bouquet of flowers, ravage your garden a bit, because that's what I mean, it's all experiments. And like the big blousy sweet peas, they're still beautiful, but they'll lose the colour on some of them, but the purple ones and the blue ones are absolutely stunning. Lovely. And so the big these are like big blousy pink, like this level pink. You can see the face. Isn't it interesting? There must be, I'm sure there's a very big science around the colours and why they stick and why some do and some don't. If I was raiding my garden though, you'd be getting a lot of pressed grass, unfortunately, and maybe that's actually a pretty good. Maybe that's a good way of getting rid of it once I've cut the lawn. And what another ones that are surprising, which you can get a lot of, is hydrangeas. So are you familiar with what a hydrangea is? So they're normally a big load of little flowers making one big flower head. But if you break them down into the individual, then they press absolutely beautifully and keep their colour. So they normally have this green and red combination is beautiful. And that it's slightly darker than it would be before it was pressed. So it darkened down a bit. But it's time consuming. This one is time consuming. And so when you're, that is almost like a big head of flowers, like you're saying, when you're pressing these, is that chopping them all off individually? Individually. Yeah. And the layout thing as well. Maybe definitely having a nice podcast or some music on when you're doing that one. It's worth it, because from one large flower head you can get absolutely tons. And do you know what you said? Do you know what it is? And I instantly was like, nope, don't have a clue. I'm terrible with flower names, but even seeing these press, I think I do instantly. Do? Like, no, do you know the one that you're talking about? Yeah. So, and this was just off a couple of heads of them. I've got absolutely tons, but the variety, so you've got different greens shades and little blues going into there, but then you've got the pinks and the purples. Brilliant. So when you're thinking about all the things that you can do, from the cyanotypes that I mentioned, the pressed flower work that I do, setting it in resin, which is super popular at the moment, even creating a little bookmark and laminating it. Fantastic. Could we just push this forward a little bit? I think we might just be able to get a little bit more from the cameras there, if we just move them a little bit forward. Let's have a look at that. There we go. Yeah. So fantastic. Thank you so much. So it is time consuming, but like you were saying, get your podcast. Yeah. Do you have a favourite podcast? Are you a podcast listener yourself, or? I'm really liking Louis Theroux at the moment.
Oh yeah.
It's that perfect combination of like lovely conversation and humour.
Yeah.
Sometimes quite dark.
I'm such a big Louis Theroux fan. Yeah.
I think he's just got such an approachable way of having a conversation with people that you can't help but be drawn into that.
I've just downloaded I've got his e-audio book as well, which I'm just listening to another one at the moment. But as soon as I finish that one, I'm got to get through this. I think it is.
Bit of punny.
Yeah.
So this will address the question of what to do if you want to keep flower heads. So this is using fine silica sand.
Fantastic.
And if you love flowers like orchids, like Rachel does, these are from her flowers. So that is now perfectly dry.
Fantastic. And is this this is obviously, these are 3D, so this is obviously a different technique to...
So this was very similar to one of these. Mm-hmm. So if you can see, it's even kept its little marks. Brilliant. All of the colour. Some of these are over a year old now. So fuchsias, you should know what a fuchsia is.
I've heard of a fuchsia. Yeah. Yes, I've seen a fuchsia.
So they're normally they're very furry-like.
Of course, beautiful as well. Really nice for keeping the colour. Is this what when you said we're gonna have a chat about that in a bit? I'm guessing because you can instantly see once we've opened this tub that the colours are much more. I feel like I'm saying the word vibrant a lot at the moment.
So
yeah.
Like it may break because these are much more fragile than using the press.
Yes.
Press, I don't know, somehow gives it a bit more resilience. Using the silica sand makes them much more fragile. I
guess with the press, and again, I'm just guessing, but like with this, they're being almost like frozen in the exact shape that they are, aren't they? Whereas the press, I guess you're giving them that sustainability by pressing them flat.
So we're talking about the hydrangea. So this is how they dry in the silica.
Fantastic. And so silica, what is silica?
I'm going to show you.
Oh, you're going to show us? Fantastic.
So these are the ones that have already been previously dried.
Yes.
And then they're just put back on a bed of silica to keep the moisture. So in your camera equipment, you normally have the little silica bags.
Of course, don't eat them.
That's
the big warning, isn't it? Yeah. So shoes was a big one. I don't know, do they still put them in shoes? I remember shoe boxes. I used to get the little packet. That's what that is. Silica, is it?
So. Yeah, because leather's a natural product. Yep. So it's this stuff. So can you get a shot of that?
I'm sure we'll get Andy in there to get a shot of that. I'll jump out of the way. Lovely. Fine white silica. And is it something that is easy to get hold of? Yeah.
Obviously, because people use it for those. So even look at little.
Yeah, you might already have some at home.
Yeah. But if you ever have a feel of one of these bags, you'll feel. Do you want to feel it?
Yeah, sure.
See what you can feel.
Yeah, so about to say, I remember it being like almost little dots, rather than a powder. It's almost like little.
And some of the stuff that you can get, which I spent a small fortune on, because he said it was florist grade, but it was really thick, and. When you're using it on the flowers and getting the flowers back out from it, that damages the petals as you're pulling them out. So you want to have a little bed of it.
Is it expensive silica, or is it I mean, I know you just said that you had some expensive florist grade one then, but in general, is it relatively cheap to get hold of?
For a small amount, that was like £17 a bag, and that probably do that level. And not to any great success, so you really need to get a lot more.
Right.
And it's reusable.
So once you've got it, you're not. It's not like you're needing to go out and get it again and again and again. It's kind of once you've got your lot, you could take the stuff out and reuse it. Oh, that's good to know.
So with this one, so obviously this is the type of thing that I think people get excited about, and with roses, it works as well. So you're going to put it in its little bed.
Oh, fantastic. So you almost kind of like plump it in there, so it's,
But if it's not sitting nicely, just make sure you take a bit more. So then you're putting it in like this. And the tulips will work as well. but due to the like fragile nature, once it's dry, depending on how you get them back out of the silica, they might damage. But we can try it anyway.
Yeah, that's good. And with the silica, when you're placing these in, is there any particular order, or is it a little bit like before where you just don't want to put too many in, or how do you go about arranging
the
them?
same with the even spacedness of it, definitely. And with these ones, they're going to need quite a lot to dry,
right?
Because they've got quite a high moisture content anyway. The same with the tulips. And then you're going to get a little beaker like this or a little cup and pour it over, because this is where you're getting all of the gaps.
So we're pouring it directly over the flowers. I'll let Andy get in there and get a nice close up of the shot that we've.
So if you're doing a rose, you're obviously going to want the rose to be open in slightly, but you don't want it to be fully open, because those petals will damage then as you're getting them back out of the silica. And
so would you call this? Would this be flower drying then? Is that the terminology?
It'd still be floral preservation.
Floral preservation.
Yeah.
I'm increasing my vocabulary today of how we're doing it. So I don't want to come across like a chump, like I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So I just say it's just like putting them to sleep for a while.
Brilliant.
And then between 1 and 2 weeks for this.
1 and 2 weeks.
Yeah, again, I know you're going to want them out after 1 week.
Yeah.
But in reality, it's always going to be 2 weeks.
Is there a stage where it's too long? You've taken all the moisture out of it, and that's going to be too damaging to them?
I've not found that yet, because obviously these go back on a bed of them to keep the moisture out until I decide what I'm going to do with them. The biggest issue is getting them back out of it, because it's heavy. So you need to get another bowl like this.
Yeah.
And then you're gently pouring it out until all of it and just the flowers are left. Because if you try and pull the flower out, that's when it's breaking. So get as much of the silica off it as first.
Like an archaeologist.
Yeah,
like
it is exactly like that.
Yeah.
And that's when your tweezers come in handy again and stuff again.
Brushes?
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, brushing them off as it's going, but gently being the key there to do it. All right, well, hopefully that has answered quite a few of the questions that came through before around colours and things like that. Paul, feel free just to shout us over if there's anything else coming through or anything that's not been answered and stuff like that coming through.
No, that's literally everything what people were asking. So we've had quite a lot of comments saying thank you for pointing that out. Some people were saying they didn't realise that they could use silica to dry them out, so that's been a great tip for them. But everyone's just really happy and very...
Yeah, so the last thing is going to be this fella.
Yeah, this big guy in the middle here.
So obviously you don't need to turn it on, because we're not going to be here long enough to watch anything actually dry.
Is that like the opposite? Is that like kind of similar to watching paint dry, watching flowers dry? Yeah.
So if you're talking about, because resin is super popular at the moment, I don't know if you're familiar with using epoxy resin.
I have a half-finished project in my garage that is waiting to be. I'm trying to figure out what colour I would like the resin to be in my little table that I'm making. And so yes.
So the same with any resin projects. I think people go like fools rush in kind of thing. Your flower has got to be as brilliantly preserved before it goes in the resin, because if not, it will still mould inside the resin, and it may look beautiful temporarily, but it's not going to last.
It's not going to last when it goes
so this is going to be for a winter scene that I'm going to create, because I wanted to create some natural material that's around now, so that I can do a seasonal thing, so representing the winter and then spring and then summer, autumn.
So what type of resin are you going to be? Is it part of a piece of, what is it going to be, a piece of furniture, a piece of like a kind of like, I guess it could be so many different things, couldn't it, if you put it into resin?
That's the thing, yeah. So
Paperweight.
another way of preserving some of the projects that I'm working on, because people might not want a framed piece of work. So it's just about exploring different ways of it, and some ideas that I've got for some art exhibitions coming up.
Brilliant.
With about documenting even the way of the things that we grow in the garden. So instead of pressing things and displaying in that way, we could literally preserve things by drying it and preserving it into resin and have a seasonal chart all set in resin. All of this lives in my mind at the moment. But when are you going to be, we've put the pink one into the silica.
Yes.
So that's there now.
Yeah.
So you can be brutal. So this is some berries that were just dried, and they're just going to be set into resin.
So with this, is this like kind of a real specialist piece of equipment, or is this something that somebody would be able to get hold of? Or
it's just that you'd call it a food dehydrator.
Right.
So people, if they want to make some strawberry slices or
banana
bananas
slices,
and stuff.
yeah. I don't have one, you see, so it looks space age to me. But no, I've definitely bought banana slices in the past. So this is what you would use if you were going to be using something like that. So you might already have one at home.
Yeah, and they're not very expensive.
And do they come? Is this? Have you put the paper down?
I've put the paper in because otherwise it's got quite a few gaps in it.
Oh yeah.
So depending on what you press, things would disappear into it. So that's just it.
That looks like is that like a baking paper?
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah. I think I made Rachel cut out the circles.
As well. It looks pro. It does look. It looks good. You can tell there's been some artists working on getting it.
So this is going to be like baking them. Mm-hmm. So you can get some quick results, and I really love drying rose petals in this. This is like, if you've got loads of roses, you've had enough of looking at them, or they're just coming to pass the best, they will dry absolutely beautifully in these, and then you can make your own potpourri kind of display. You can put it in a little bottle. Like, I've used that because that's actually from my grandma's funeral.
Oh wow!
It's just a lovely way of being able to keep flowers.
Yeah, definitely.
Joe would do it in a special way, and then in the little jar that's next to it, that's all the ones that have been dried. It's a really quick way of drying them to do something immediately with them, and that would work within the resin idea as well. They're obviously fragile, and I would say that the texture makes them feel a bit crispy. But if you want to kind of see what they look like dry, it just does it in a couple of hours.
Wow, that is really
This is
quick
hours in terms of, hours. Then with the silica, it's a few weeks.
Yeah.
And then in reality, with the flower pressing, that's a few months if you really want to do it properly.
Wow.
So time scale of what you want to play with immediately is which option that you work with.
Do you mix? I'm guessing you mix all three up so you can have a little bit of a play between all of them at different times and stuff.
We use this a lot within Old Town Bloom again, because we collect all the herbs and the lavender that grows locally, and we dry that, and
and that's you get dry herb. Fantastic.
And which smells amazing.
Oh yeah.
It's just a really nice way of playing around with it, and especially if there's like the roses or the peonies or something big that you want to see, that big flower head version of it, that's a nice way of doing it. Or if you want the petals to throw in your bath or set into any kind of cosmetic soap making and stuff, that's a really nice way of doing it as well.
So you use all three. Do you have a favourite? Do you have a favourite one of the three where you think, do you know what? I'm sure you like them all for different reasons, but is there one where you kind of go, do you know what? Actually, out of all the three techniques, this is my favourite one.
I think I've not really started playing with the resin yet, but I've got probably a feeling that I'm going to like the 3D nature. Because if you've had a look at the ones that are in this one.
Could we just push this a little bit forward again?
This one,
Yeah, fantastic. Just
so with this.
Yeah.
All of the colour stays.
Brilliant, yeah.
All the colour stays. All the texture stays. The like natural form and shape of them stay. Like another of my favourites that presses beautifully is a Strontia, which is this one. And I grow them on the roof terrace at the studio as well. So it's nice little, they're just really beautiful 3D shapes. So that's really nice to see that, but I don't know, there's something maybe Victorian in me that loves the the flower pressing side of things. Yeah. That there's just seems to be. Like when we were speaking to that guy in the Natural History Museum, and the fact that people have been doing it for hundreds of years. And there's pressed flower examples now that are way over 200 years, and in theory any of the stuff that I've made could last that long, and there's some real satisfaction in that. I think just from this, we said from the beginning, this was one of our most popular workshops in terms of numbers of people that have signed up for it. I know that we've got a lot of people watching live now, and we also have been getting a lot of comments in. So, you know, it's still clearly popular right now if people wanting to learn about it, wanting to figure out how they can get involved in it as well. Paul, do we have a question there come through? Fantastic.
So we've a common question's coming through now because we're talking about the food dehydrator and dehydrating the flowers. A question that's come through quite a lot is, can people use a microwave to dry their flowers?
Yes, you can. I personally don't like the results from it. I think if you can do it carefully and slowly and not blast them, then you can get quite good results. But in reality, when you've been pressing something for 6 weeks, you know without a doubt all the moisture's gone, and it's pressed, and it'll last like that for, I don't know, 100 years.
Yep.
But I can't guarantee that with a microwave you're going to get the same. You're going to get the same results. It all depends on what you're going to use it. If you're using it and it's totally dry, because you're drying it, because then it's going to go in resin, that's probably slightly different. If you're using it because it's going to go in a different piece or something, I wouldn't be 100% about the results using a microwave.
Yeah. Another question that's come through quite a lot is about the food dehydrator itself, because they range very much in price, from quite cheap to quite expensive. Is there a particular one, or the one you're using, would you recommend it, and what brand is it?
This one was from Amazon, and it was about, I think, £35 at the time.
Okay.
That's the range. If you're looking at the super expensive ones, then you're looking at the ones that are over £1,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
it's quite crazy.
You won't have room for one because they're absolutely massive.
Yeah, because I had a quick Google myself just to see if I could answer it, and then the prices were I was like, I better ask this one because I've no idea.
Yeah, because there's some that go into the floral preservation style that do it large scale.
Yeah.
And then they use it and cast it into the beautiful globes of stuff, and but they're using it's called an industrial one, and there's just no way that if you're experimenting with stuff, don't even bother trying to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you very much.
That's great. So really interesting. It made me laugh then with the questions about mine. It must be a real thing. I think when they get a few questions through about it, but I was thinking it's like, months, weeks, days, minutes.
Yes.
That's what I want. 3 minutes. Right. Yeah.
I think it's all about the final result, the way that I work. If you want to.
Yeah, I think that'd be fantastic. So we've got a few pieces of your work here, and we've got. So I'm going to use my knowledge of what we've learned so far.
Okay,
so I'm going to guess that this is pressed flowers that we've got here.
Yes.
As part of this live. So this was this a commissioned piece of work?
So Rachel and I both did online workshops for the library last year. Mm-hmm. As we were embracing the way of engaging with people during lockdown and experimenting with going online with stuff that we do. So when I was working with the library, it made sense to create the word library. A way that I work is with gold leaf.
Yes, we've got a few gold leaf examples
so if
here.
You have the word mum and love, that's when I've done the lettering and then put the first layer of gold leaf.
I've seen, not you, but I've seen. I probably have seen the images of you doing it online. But I know that gold leaf it's one of those things where it seems so you have to be really patient and really skilled with it. It looks like you've got these little flakes that you're kind of putting on and making sure that it's perfectly in line and stuff like that. Does it take a long time to master that?
I think probably in the same way that Rachel can be very blasé about sewing and the patience that takes. I'm probably that way with this.
Yeah.
There's lots of fiddliness, like transferring the lettering onto the paper is fiddly.
Yeah.
When you're waiting, because you use acrylic size, which is a type of glue that then has to become a certain level of tacky. You can't use, if it's still wet, it won't take the gold leaf, so it has to be tacky.
Yeah.
You feel it on your finger a little bit, yeah. And then you put in the gold leaf, and you can use the flakes, but you can also use the book leaves and pat it on. And then you brush it off in a cloud of gold leaf, dust everywhere. And then I'm brushing that off, and then I'm going in with a layer of skeleton leaves on top of that, which is on the flowers or on the tulip design there.
Yeah, Andy, could we get you in on this tulip here design? Because I think what we can see, if we get a nice close-up, is you can actually see the leaf kind of coming through beneath the top of it. I think it's also on the flowers as well.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
But I think you might have a better chance of being able to get it in there. There you go. You can just about see those ridges of the flowers there as they're coming through. Great shot there, Andy. Great work.
The reason why I started doing that was I love the gold in itself, but I wanted to knock it back a bit to use the natural aspect of it more. So when I started playing around with the skeleton leaves, they just seem to add an extra layer of dimension onto it. So then comes the final layer of the flowers. So if you zoom in on that for me.
Yeah, so we jump back to the library one that we've got there.
So If you look on that, you can see the hydrangea flowers. You'll be able to see some gypsophilia.
Yes.
You'll be able to see some lady's mantle, which is the one with the yellow flowers on it. And some of the little tiny astrantia as well.
Which was the one it looks absolutely brilliant at the top of the eye, the one with the kind of like...
That's the hydrangea.
Is that the hydrangea? Yeah,
So
yeah, that looks great.
Of all of the big, massive flowers that I use, I then go through all of the ones that I've pressed and pick the smallest, which are the most fiddliest and the ones that are least likely to press well. But because of the size that I work, that's the ones that you have to use. So you're looking at all the things that you can press, like with the yellow stuff that is in the press. This, in my work, as you see the curves going around it, that will form some of the letters in itself. So you've got the flow of the font that you use, and you're using the natural forms to then help you write the letters as well.
Brilliant. It's really interesting, isn't it, where from the eye of the artist to the eye of the maker, where you start to pick out those little things, and like anyone else would be looking at that going, oh, that's a nice little group of flowers, but where you're looking at it going, oh, that would be a lovely J. That would be perfect in an S. That where I need the shapes.
Yeah, and just because I use gold leaf doesn't mean that everyone else has to. You can make beautiful letters and words just using the flowers. Yeah, it just takes patience, and sometimes you can just write it out in pencil first. Yeah. And literally drop them over it and build it up that way.
It's a little bit like as we had when we had Rachel before, where we were doing the painting of the fabric, and it was beautiful, and the bubble painting as well. Beautiful, but it can just be, that's just the start, isn't it? What you do with it once you've got that is the kind of it's really interesting in where you can kind of take it and how you can do it, and getting excited about it, but also experimenting. It's great to hear you say, talking about, you're now experimenting with resin, and kind of like and I'm sure once you've got that, you'll be there'll be something else that you want to go on and start doing with them as well.
You'll see me next year if we do it again next year with large scale resin pieces maybe, or the next thing that we've moved on to.
Fantastic, brilliant. So I know one of the things that we really wanted to push and get people to do is talk a little bit like when we said with Rachel before, is to complete one of the forms that we've got on the Hazelhurst website. So you weren't there before. Do you want to just let us know a little bit about what you are asking people about with questions and things like that?
Yeah, so we've put together a visual art survey because we really want to know what people local to us want to do. I think during lockdown, we've had a lot of time to think and discuss how we work ourselves as artists, but what other creatives are doing, because of how isolating it must feel while people are working at home, and whether they want opportunities to work together either in studio spaces or guided workshops or workshop spaces. Because I know that we've spoke about before that need to find spaces to work and run things like this. Because in an ideal world, well, I certainly wouldn't be doing this, as everybody that knows me goes, how is she in front of the camera now? Because it's the opposite of what I want to do.
You're doing a fantastic job.
We want to do things in person and talk to people, and we want people to get excited about projects like this. And not just stuff that we're teaching them, we want to be there to be able to offer equipment and advice so that they can do their own projects. Because people have absolutely tons, everyone's been hammering YouTube and finding new lockdown hobbies and stuff, and it's like, well, what do you want to do then? So if you fill in the form, it sounds so blasé about, but fill in the form and tell us what you want to do so that we can create more projects like this.
But it's great, isn't it? Because what you want to do is, it's exactly that. It's sometimes you can get stuck in kind of thinking, oh, I know what people want. I know what people are interested in. This is what I'm interested in. So surely there'll be, and sometimes that's right. A lot of, you'll put something on because you like it, or you've got the ability to be able to do it, and that's fantastic. But what's really nice about this is it's asking the people, what do you want to see, and you can make a difference in what's going to be offered, what's going to be available, and things like that. So I think what we'll do is, I think Paul will be able to get that up on his website, on his computer screen. Is that right?
Done it,
fantastic. So
I have got a question though.
Oh, why
that's
come
up quite a few times in the last couple of minutes. People are saying once they've dried the flowers and they've got what they want, if they're attaching it to a card that they're going to send to somebody or make a design out of it, what should they use? What is there a specific type of glue that's not going to damage the flowers once they've been dried, or is there any other tips that you could give them?
That's a super question. PVA glue. So you can get a pH neutral one, that's the best. Any type of thing that's in a preservation point of view. But Mod Podge is a popular one that I'm sure people are familiar with. I would water down the PVA glue a little bit, and I didn't bring my other handy tool, which Rachel has seen many times. It's a cocktail stick.
All right.
When you're working with the pressed flowers, you only need a minuscule amount of it. If you're attaching it to any type of paper, it only takes a little bit. Obviously, if you're not framing it behind glass, your flowers aren't going to last a massive amount of time. You can laminate it. It's quite happy. Once it's preserved, you can create a bookmark from it, or it will last quite nicely on a card for quite a while. It's not going to last 100 years.
Yeah.
But it'll be quite happy on a card.
Yeah. That's great. That's a lot of people have been coming up with that because they've got the product now. What to do with it?
Yeah. That's
Certain glues, it's just not going to be, your flowers will wrinkle up. A lot of times people use a spray adhesive on it, it will destroy your flower. Because I think they want to keep it out in the wild on the card and looking beautiful, but the moment that you put something on that flower, you've wrecked it. It may as well look nice and not do anything to it. Instead of adding something on top of it.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
So Claire, we heard that this was part of a project that you were doing with the library. Big up Halton Libraries.
Yeah.
While we were there, fantastic.
Definitely.
They helped.
We love them.
They worked with us on one of our very first online provisions. Actually, was the library asking us. So thank you very much for them for helping us support us do that. But if people want to get some of your work, want to commission you for something, what's the best way of them doing that?
Well, I'm all over social media, I'm not going to lie. I use all of them. I use Instagram, Facebook, Twitter.
Fantastic.
CR Pitt Designs.
CR Pitt Designs, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, get on there and be able to do it.
Yeah.
Have you got a website, or you've got to potentially get you through the Hazelhurst one?
Yeah. I'm on Etsy at the moment, but my shop's on a holiday mode, but any messages that come into Hazelhurst, I can answer on myself or Rachel's behalf if anybody's got any other questions.
If anyone wants to get in touch with any questions for Claire, we'll always pass them on, and any requests for work or anything like that, we'll obviously pass them on to you. I'll pass them on to you as well. We've got a couple of. I've just spotted these. We've not talked about these too much. Is this a different type of your work over
can
here?
I
Then
pass that over to you?
I'll grab that.
You can be my glamorous assistant instead of Rachel.
That's fine.
So, we haven't got time to go into the world of monoprinting today because, well, I've talked too much already.
But we can have a look, can't we?
When we were talking about lack of equipment, and obviously if you haven't got a printing press or anything at home, which not everybody does, there's something that you can get called a jelly plate. So, this is what it's like. There, sorry, it's that.
And is that a relatively straightforward thing to be able to get hold of? That's something that you can just go online and Google jelly plate.
I don't like saying Amazon, but now we know that we can cut down the boxes and use them in flower pressing.
They just sell everything, don't they?
Yeah.
It's so difficult not to say it sometimes.
But actually, a lady that I follow on Instagram is local. Bev Evans, I think her name is on Instagram, but she actually makes her own.
Wow.
And does a little printing kit, so I can always hook people up.
Yeah, we're always up for
this is what it looks like.
Promoting local artists and local organisations. That looks slimy.
You have to feel it now.
Go on. So I feel. That's interesting. And yet you would use this to with some of the flowers that you've pressed, or
no, they don't have to be pressed.
Sorry,
you can use them pressed though.
Yeah,
absolutely. But sometimes the pressed flowers are a little bit fragile.
So you wanted something a little bit more sturdy. Here we go.
I'll just do a pretend I'm doing it demonstration.
Yeah.
So you just want to put your paint down, whatever colours that you want to work with.
That's
it doing it. Then you can use your little brayer. Then you're gonna outline that.
Roll it onto there.
So here's a leaf I used earlier.
I thought that was like a magnificent blue leaf that I'd never. I was like, what tree is that? Oh no, it's from the printing.
So then you're going to put that down. So you'd put it vein side down.
Vein side down.
Like this. And then you're going to put your piece of paper on it. Obviously, let's pretend that. And then the first time you do it, you're just going to have the outline.
Yeah.
And then the second time you print it, it's going to pull up so you'll take that off and then you'll put another piece of paper down and then it will pull up all of those details.
Fantastic.
So all of those veins. And it is a lot of fun.
Fantastic.
So these are just leaves,
And
moss and random things.
and when you're building it up, do you tend to do a little bit of a collage of different bits and bobs on there?
Yeah, you can just repeatedly. You don't even wait for the first layer to dry.
Straight back in there.
And it's just beautiful effects. It's very similar in the same way that Rachel is mixing her colours. And it's colour combinations that you don't necessarily think would work. But even when you're just using the stuff like this, who would think that would be nice? But you create such beautiful patterns.
Oh, brilliant.
And then, so if you want to be a bit more delicate, you're using actually the pressed flowers.
These are the pressed flowers that have come in, you can see the strap there.
But you've got to realise that if you're printing with it, you're sacrificing it.
Oh yeah, of course. If
they're going into the holy bin.
The paint all over it,
Once you've done that to them, obviously the leaves will stay for a while. The lovely one.
Press at your own risk.
This one leaf was printed all of these times.
And all those different colours on it,
Yeah, all of it. Yeah, you don't even need to clean the plate in between.
Just over the top.
And then that's using this stuff again.
The
so the first time you're printing it, it's going to leave that behind, and then you take the thing off, and then you repeatedly print it. But you can have a lot of fun.
Brilliant. So that looked, again, very similar to the, with the flowers and with the bullet printing and with the fabric painting. They look like they could be fantastic backgrounds to cards or something that could be repeated and put on top of it and kind of, again, used as a piece of artwork itself or as the backdrop for another piece of art or another thing that you're going to be, or even potentially a backdrop for some of the pressed flowers.
Yeah, that's exactly my intentions with it. And when you were saying before about how then you could use it digitally, because everything scans or photographs brilliantly, and then you can use it to digitally impose it, because Rachel started experimenting a lot more with digital art as well. And it's what else can you do to keep your project going?
I think that's it. I think it's just about experimenting, trying new things, seeing what works, and I think that's the biggest thing. It's not being scared to fail at something, is it? Just go out there, give it a go, and if it doesn't look great, you go and do it again, or you might see one bit of it that looks good, and you go, oh well, how can I replicate that section of it?
This was one session.
Wow.
In about half an hour, and this is the yes pile. And then the no pile, which I haven't brought with me, which probably should have been, to be fair, is like this big.
But yeah, it's
but using random paper, using like say this paper, because I really do try and be environmentally conscious. So if you notice a brown marks on this, this is paper that's come out of the press. And obviously this is where mould has started to set in, so you don't use this piece of paper anymore.
Yeah.
People will be tempted to. But it's contaminating your press then if you do it. So we'll use it for something else. So I was like, well, why not use it for a test print?
Definitely.
And then some of the rougher paper that have used is printer paper, like that.
Yeah,
it's still a beautiful process and stuff, but it's stuff that I probably printed, something's misprinted because printers yet again the alignment's gone from it, so you have to print something again. And you're like, it's a lot of wasted paper now. What can I do with it? Use that for your test prints.
I think that's really nice what you just said then, and very honest as well, because I think sometimes somebody might try something like this and go, oh well. All the pieces, I really liked all the pieces that Rachel was showing, Claire was showing during the during the process. But I've only got 1 in 3 that looks. And you go, but yeah, you're gonna have things that look great. You're gonna have things that might not look quite as great, but just keep going, keep trying it, keep adapting it,
especially when
it
comes to colour mixing. Because as we've said before, brown happens a lot.
Brown happens a lot. Yeah,
it sounds terrible, but it is true. That is what happens. You're like, that's a winning colour combination. That's gone hideously wrong. And it's just about starting again and trying something new. And and it's the same when you press things the first time and everything's gone brown and horrible. Like the first couple of times I was pressing flowers, my nemesis at the moment are daisies. They just don't press well for me, so I haven't tried them in the silica yet, so that's potentially going to be my next target. And roses are pretty much my nemesis as well. They can make lovely petals, but them as a whole beautiful flower, I've not won with that one yet.
Hopefully, well, maybe when we get you back next year, maybe you'll be like that. Look at this beautiful rose that we've got. We've got done. Oh, well, brilliant. Thank you so much for coming in today and showing us all these different techniques. We have been pressing, we have been drying in silica, we've been looking at the dehumidifier.
Dehydrator.
Oh, I was really chuffed that I got dehumidifier out then. And looking at the fabulous artwork that you've been doing and creating with it as well. So thank you so much for coming in, speaking to us and answering everyone's questions as well that have been coming through. You've done a fantastic job.
Happy to answer any more as well if you keep on sending them in.
A lot of comments saying it was a great session and thank you for doing it.
Thank you everyone for listening.
Yeah, thanks for listening, thanks for commenting. And this, unfortunately, this is the end of Halton MakeFest for 2021. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you very much for watching us. Continue getting your comments in. We'd love to see, even if it might be in a couple of weeks' time, any pressed flowers that you've done.
6 weeks' time.
Yeah, 6 weeks, depending on how you've done it. Microwave, 2 minutes' time. We want to be seeing, we'll be seeing them.
Prove me wrong.
Yeah.
Prove me wrong with the microwave ones.
Hashtag Halton MF21 for any of those, and whatever social media works best for you. So you're on Facebook, Halton MakeFest on there. You're on Twitter, Halton MakeFest on there, or you're on Instagram, Halton MakeFest on there. If you've taken part in any of the sessions during the week, we've been loving seeing all the different things, from the origami to the book art to the creative stories that people sent through. We've got so much stuff, and we're going to keep looking through them, and we're going to respond to people and let them push things out as well, and let people know about different things. We are going to be next week, important to say, we've got some workshops and some activities from artists that couldn't make it live, so we are going to be putting out some on-demand materials, so keep your eyes and ears peeled for them. We've got some great artists and organisations that couldn't come with us live but have put together some work to be part of Halton MakeFest, so we'll be pushing them out. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled for them, and we'll be doing that. But just to say a massive thank you to absolutely everyone that's come and helped us put this on. Without the work and all the dedication from the creatives and the other organisations in Halton and close by, but there's no chance we would have been able to do this. And also thank you to everyone that's tuned in, added a comment, shared it, told a friend about it. It's been absolutely brilliant. We've had an amazing time being here doing it. And yeah, thanks very much for tuning in and being part of Halton MakeFest with us. Until next year, I've been Sean from Make or Create, and this has been Halton MakeFest. See you all again. Take care.